The fuel crisis that has been growing in Belarus in recent weeks has reached a turning point that has exhausted the patience of the people. In particular, Ukraine's attacks on the supply lines feeding Belarus have halted oil supplies from Russia.
Belarus at the crossroads, straining under pressure from Moscow's ambitions, from Kyiv's counterstrike strategy, and from Europe's response at its border. Tonight, the fate of a regime, the loyalties of its army, and the hopes of its people all hang in the balance. In recent weeks, Ukraine has intensified attacks on energy infrastructure that supplies not only Russia, but also Belarus and EU states. One flagship target has been the Druzhba oil pipeline, a Soviet-era artery that carries crude through Russia into Europe, including Hungary and Slovakia. Oil supplies to those nations were interrupted on August 21st when a drone struck the Unecha pumping station in the Bryansk area of Russia. Robert Brovdy and other Ukrainian officers have stated that the pipeline was the focus of these attacks. Oil supplies have been halted for days at a time due to the effectiveness of these strikes. EU authorities have clarified that the next 19th sanctions package will not restrict flows through Druzhba itself. For the time being, that pipeline is exempt from new penalties. While Ukraine appears to aim not directly at Belarus's internal economy, the disruption has ripple effects. Belarusian refineries depend on oil imports, and downstream trade and revenue are vulnerable. Some claims about Belarus facing an internal collapse due to lack of fuel or a cutoff from China are less well supported in public sources as of now and must be treated with caution. At Belarus's western border, tensions are also sharply rising. On September 9th to 10th, Russia launched what Polish, NATO, and Allied reporting described as a mass incursion of drones into Polish airspace. Between 19 and 23 drones were detected. Up to 4 were shot down. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk called the incursion a direct threat, and Poland invoked Article 4 of the NATO treaty, which is used when a member feels its security is threatened. In response to both the incursion and joint Russian-Belarusian military drills, Zapad 2025, near its border, Poland announced it would close all road crossings with Belarus and suspend many rail crossings. These closures effectively sever significant parts of Belarus's trade routes with the European Union. Although a complete border closure has been imposed indefinitely, as in until conditions are safe, the actual effects on freight, transit, and civilian mobility are already profound. There is no easily accessible report to substantiate the claims that China-EU trade through Belarus has fully collapsed or that Belarus is wholly cut off from Europe. Other routes are still up for debate. The balance of power within Belarus is changing as a result of these two pressures: Poland tightening or closing its border with Belarus and Ukraine attacking pipeline infrastructure. First, economically, Belarus is highly dependent on transit fees and energy imports, both of which are under pressure. The Druzhba pipeline interruptions threaten fuel supplies and industrial capacity. Economies already suffering from sanctions may face harder bottlenecks, especially in rural areas, agriculture, and logistics. Second, politically, mass public discontent, particularly among those who travel, work, or study across Europe or depend on cross-border trade, is growing. Protests recently seen in border cities like Brest and Grodno reflect localized disruptions. In Warsaw, the detainment of Belarusians over alleged drone flights near government buildings has added tensions. On the security side, while there is no confirmed mass defection in Belarus's military or security services, analysts note growing pressure on Lukashenko's regime to maintain loyalty, especially as privileges, access to foreign currency, or border mobility begin to suffer. Whether those tensions become cracks in the system remains uncertain. So what are the scenarios ahead? One possibility is a managed change from within. Some kind of palace coup among Belarus's Siloviki security elites, who see Lukashenko's position weakening and want to preserve their own status. Reports of internal regime anxiety over border closures, sanctions, and energy problems provide indirect evidence for that. A more spectacular popular uprising is an alternative scenario. The 2020 events demonstrated that massive demonstrations have the power to topple the government, even if the demonstrators' demands were more important than the country's survival at the time, and the regime's response was harsh and repressive. People may make more pointed demands and be more inclined to use force if they now feel that their basic means of subsistence are in danger. Increased Russian direct participation in Belarus is a third, less likely but not impossible option. This might be done to protect supply lines, bolster its buffer, or establish control, particularly if Lukashenko is perceived as not meeting Russia's strategic demands. What is not supported by reliable evidence at this time is a total collapse of Belarus's government in weeks or a sudden realignment with the West in full. Both of those remain aspirations for some, but face huge barriers: military, economic, and diplomatic. International reactions are tightening. Poland, NATO, and EU countries are bolstering their defenses, including Operation Eastern Sentry, and demanding accountability for airspace violations. Putin's role remains central. Moscow is Russia's best strategic lever in the region. But whether Putin is knowingly throwing Belarus into the fire, as some analysts argue, is a matter of interpretation and lacks definitive proof in public documents. Belarus is not yet crushed, but the pressure is intense. Energy lines are being struck, borders are being closed, people's patience is fraying. The next few weeks may not just decide Lukashenko's fate, but also the shape of resistance, allegiance, and power in all of Eastern Europe.